Hey, somebody. Thank you very much.
Fine here.
You want somebody?
I do.
I'm fine, thank you. I'm fine.
All right, we're going to come out of recess. We now have Resolution 20R01 establishing the time of the City Council meeting. Craig.
There's a motion, sorry. This was brought up by council last year to move our council meetings from 7 o'clock to 6 o'clock. And it's on motion, so if council wants to ask any questions, I'm happy to answer those. We'll also move the public comment session up by half an hour too, so we can get that accommodated.
We talked about this at our workshop, and one of the reasons traditionally we've always met at 7 o'clock, and someone had come up a while back and said, hey, have y'all ever thought about having your meetings at 6 o'clock like all the other city meetings? One, because we figured up that it was 2,000 some odd staff hours that we spend every year for that 2-hour period that most people stay here at City Hall. And then also the people who said it makes no sense for me to have to leave work, drive home, then come back. It would make more sense if I could just come straight to the council meeting. So it seems like it makes sense to try that at 6 o'clock. Yes, please.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we're going to move to land use matters. We have the request to rezone approximately 122.19 acres located along Cason Trail, Eastview Drive, and Racket Club Drive. Planning. Mr. Blomley.
Thank you, Mayor McFarland, and good evening once again, Mayor McFarland and members of council. Our one public hearing tonight is for a rezoning request located, as you mentioned, on the north side of Cason Trail, north of Eastview Drive, and kind of southeast of Racket Club Drive. It's for a rezoning from RS10 and RS15. So about the southern 42 acres is zoned RS10, which is residential single family with minimum lot sizes of 10,000 square feet. And the northern 80 or so acres is zoned RS15, residential single family with a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet. This application is about a year in the making. The applicant originally submitted his application to the Planning Commission a little over a year ago, and it included only the 40 acres that's zoned RS10. After a Planning Commission public hearing in the springtime, in which there were significant concerns related to access, the applicant decided to start over from scratch, submit a new application, and he put the property, the 80 acres to the north, under contract so that he could provide additional access points into the neighborhood. The request is for a PUD called Hidden Rivers PUD, Hidden River Estates PUD, And PUD, of course, allows multiple uses. So this development consists of a total of 620 single-family residential uses. 602 of those would be single-family attached, and 18 of those would be single-family detached, as well as 15,000 square feet of commercial space in a kind of a neighborhood commercial building that is proposed as well to serve the existing rooftops in the area as well as the proposed rooftops. The future land use map of the Murfreesboro 2035 comprehensive plan, which is up on the screen in front of you, recommends general residential as the preferred land use character for the area, or for it's actually 4 parcels. The 2 1-acre parcels along Racket Club Drive, it recommends suburban residential, consistent with the fact that they are lots from the Countryside Estates subdivision. The 2 larger parcels are recommended to be suburban residential, which would allow single-family attached and detached uses with a density of 3.54 to 8.64 dwelling units per acre. So the request, which is the density is in between 5 and 6 dwelling units per acre, is generally consistent with the recommendations of the future land use map. However, the general residential, I don't believe makes provisions for the neighborhood commercial area, so that would be a deviation from the 2035 comprehensive plan. The adjacent land uses in the area are to the west, single-family residential. The Cason Grove Estates subdivision is located to the west and southwest of the subject property, and the Countryside Estates subdivision is located to the west and northwest of the subject property. It's on both sides of River Rock Boulevard. To the south of the subject property is an additional parcel owned by, I believe it's owned by World Outreach Church, but the applicant, and I'll get to that in a moment, proposes to purchase that property in order to provide an additional connection. Directly to the east of the subject property is the Stones River Greenway, and further to the east is the West Point subdivision, which is zoned light industrial. There have been a couple of developments proposed in the West Point subdivision, including the Lazy Days RV Sales Center and the Murfreesboro Indoor Shooting Range along BC Road off of the Warrior Drive extension. The Planning Commission considered this item at its October 2nd, 2019 regular meeting, conducted a public hearing that night, and voted to recommend the approval of this rezoning request. A couple of things of note since that Planning Commission meeting, and I won't go into too great a detail about the specifics of the development plan because I don't want to repeat what the applicant's representatives will be telling you in their presentation. But since the Planning Commission public hearing, as I mentioned, the applicant has included as a commitment in his pattern book, which would become part of the zoning, to construct the roadway through the property to the south of Cason Trail to connect to the roadway that is a part of the Shalom Farms development, which would be part of the Barfield Road extension north. There would be a T intersection, and that roadway would go up to meet the roadway that the applicant proposes. And he's proposing to have that constructed prior to breaking ground on this development as a commitment that he's making in his pattern book. They'll go over that commitment in greater detail, but that is one significant change since the Planning Commission public hearing. Another point that I wanted to raise is that the adjacent neighbors have submitted what is termed a protest in the zoning ordinance, and that protest, if it meets certain criteria, requires a 2/3 vote of the council to pass the ordinance. And so staff has reviewed the protest and confirmed it to meet the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance. So a vote to pass this ordinance tonight will require a 2/3 vote of the council. Mr. Tucker, if you have any questions, further questions about that, can elaborate on it. I'll be happy to answer any questions before or after the public hearing. And if you have no further questions of me right now, I'd like to invite Mr. Bill Huddleston up as he and his team have a PowerPoint presentation.
Good evening, Mayor McFarland and members of the City Council. I'm Bill Huddleston with Huddleston Steel Engineering. We are the planners and engineers for this very exciting project of Hidden Rivers Estates being proposed by Mr. Howard Wilson and Mr. Brian Burns, who are with me tonight. Also with me tonight is our planner, Mr. Clyde Roundtree, who I'll introduce in a few minutes to go over the specifics of this plan. What I would like to do first is take a few minutes to talk about some of the engineering issues related to this project, and more specifically, I'd like to talk about traffic, floodplain management, and stormwater management. Traffic by far has been the most talked about issue related to this development throughout the process. As Mr. Blomley stated, we've been working on this project for over a year. And throughout that process, this project has evolved over time. What you see on the screen is the master plan for the project. The original master plan included only the right-hand portion of this. That map going to the right goes south, going to the left goes north. So the southern portion of this, where the buildings are shown in orange and yellow, is the original area that we initially proposed for this project. Now, this original plan had its main access onto Cason Trail, and then traffic would disperse throughout the existing neighborhoods to go north, south, or west. Our original traffic study did show that critical intersections near the development would continue to operate at appropriate levels of service, even with the addition of the project traffic. But through the Planning Commission portion of this project, after considering input from the public, from the planning, and basically from the public, the Planning Commission was not totally comfortable with having our access just coming out on Cason Trail. So they asked us to go back and get at least an emergency access onto Eastview Drive across the Johns property to the north. Now, in order to get that additional access across the Johns property, the developer would have to acquire the entire Johns property. The addition of this property, which is the area to the north, which is basically shown with red buildings, resulted in actually many benefits for the project and to the city. The development of this part of the project, adding to the overall project, decreased our overall density because now we were able to get single-family estate lots in this component. And those are the large lots along the northern portion of the property backing up to the river. We were able to incorporate the Johns Home Place into a superior amenity package. And we were able to add 2 new access points to the development, one at Eastview Drive and one at Racket Club Drive. Our amended traffic study for this new development showed the traffic could diffuse even better throughout the existing neighborhoods. In fact, the 4 critical intersections in the existing neighborhoods continue to operate at acceptable levels of service A, B, and C with the addition of the project traffic. So now this plan follows a long-standing city policy and practices of connecting and/or extending public streets, where public streets are stubbed into property to be developed. We even added a stub street into the Chambers property to the south for whenever it develops. One topic of discussion has been about the proposed connection to Racket Club Drive. What I'm showing on the screen right now is a plat that shows since 1977, A connection to Racket Club Drive, such as we propose here, has been contemplated. That is the 50-foot strip just on the right side of the map, just to the north of Lot 77. This connection provides good access for our age-targeted houses, which is a big portion of those red buildings that you saw in the master plan. And these age-targeted houses will generate less traffic than the other components of our development. This connection will be more convenient for the mail kiosk at the clubhouse, and it will allow an alternative so that the north side of the project won't all have to go through Eastview Drive. This connection and the connection to Eastview also will provide access for pedestrian bikes to the Greenway, and they do not have this area. The areas to the west of this do not have conveniently available access to the Greenway from those neighborhoods. So this rezoning process continued as the developers and the design team continued to listen to city staff, planning commission, and the public. We determined that the best possible scenario for traffic would be to provide a direct connection to the south to State Route 99. Okay, so what I'm showing here is the new access that we're proposing to go straight to State Route 99 so that traffic from our new development would not even have to go into the existing neighborhoods. In order to ensure that this happens, the developer is buying an additional 16 acres to the south so that he can complete the connection to State Route 99 already being initiated by a multifamily development to the south. So the multifamily development has already initiated that gray stretch of roadway down to State Route 99. We're buying the 16 acres between that and our development so that we can provide a straight shot down to State Route 99 so that traffic won't have to go through the existing neighborhoods. And as the intersection design shows, where that connection connects to State Route 99 at Barfield Road, significant laneage is providing to add capacity for that Barfield Road intersection. One of the great things about this connection is that we can designate this direct access to and from State Route 99 to be used for our construction traffic. That was a big issue with the nearby residents as we went through this process. They did not want construction traffic coming through their neighborhood, so now we can direct that traffic through this direct access. And in so doing, we'll be developing no more than 24 single-family, 10,000 square foot minimum lots along that roadway, which is just a 1.5 lots per acre density. Now what that does for us, it reduces our overall density for this project. Now we're below 5 units per acre, and that's very important, especially in light of your recent discussions of the sewer allocation. Also, the developer will be donating some acreage that will be directly south of the existing Cason Lane trailhead. Probably it's just to the right of that red line on that exhibit. He's going to donate that acreage to expand the dog park at the trailhead. Parking can be expanded. Any plans to provide, or plans that there'll be provided, a kayak storage area and launch ramp at that location. It's important to note also that early on in this process, the developers proposed to construct a 10-foot multi-use path along the south side of Cason Trail. So again, this extensive process that we've gone to get here tonight has resulted in a lot of new benefits being provided not only for this project, but also for the city and its residents. There has been discussion about more citywide traffic issues as they relate to Old Fort Parkway and New Salem Road. As far as New Salem Road goes, that stretch of highway is currently under construction by TDOT. At least the first phase is, and that's scheduled to be complete within a year. That phase is from Cason Lane to Warrior Drive. The second phase from I-24 to Old Fort Parkway is funded for 2021, so pretty soon. And then Phase 3 from Cason Lane to Veterans Parkway could be funded for 2023. So we've got a 10-year project for our build-out, and these roadway improvements are slated to be ahead of us. And this project does provide significant capacity along State Route 99. A couple of other important transportation projects are outlined in the city's major thoroughfare plan. The city currently is working on a transportation planning report for a bridge over I-24 connecting Warrior Drive with Rutherford Boulevard and Rutledge Way to the south. And the city expects public investment on a bridge from River Rock over Stones River near the former Racket Club property. These two connections are important because they will eventually allow vehicular, pedestrian, and bicycle traffic to travel across I-24 without ever having to go through the existing interchanges of Old Fort Parkway and New Salem Highway. Floodplain development is another topic that has been discussed. We will be following FEMA and city guidelines that allow us to fill in the floodplain as long as we don't fill in the floodway. It's very important that we don't fill in the floodway because the FEMA model assumes that that channel will be preserved, even though it also assumes that this type of development occurs in the floodplain, and so they model it such that if the channel is preserved, the 100-year floodplain will not increase by more than a foot. And finally, I want to touch on stormwater management. We will be providing retention and detention ponds to address both stormwater quantity and quality. For the quantity, these ponds hold back the stormwater so that our post-development runoff rates do not exceed our pre-development rates. And then for quality, these ponds hold the stormwater for at least 24 hours so that the sediment settles out in the ponds and we don't pollute the river. Therefore, we're sending cleaner water to the river. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Clive Roundtree to go over some specifics of this project. And of course, I'll be around later to answer any questions.
Mayor McFarland, council members, my name is Clyde Roundtree with Huddleston Steel Engineering, and as Bill mentioned, we're very excited about Hidden River Estates as a new development in the Murfreesboro community. We thank Mr. Burns for working so hard to try to make it something that we can feel very positive about as far as responding to the concerns that so many people in this room have, and we'll hear a lot of those tonight. But I think Bill's already addressed a few of those, and we want, from the inception of Hidden River, it's always been about a healthy outdoor living lifestyle community. Mr. Burns located and saw this opportunity with this piece of property because of its proximity to the Greenway and said, wouldn't it be amazing for people to have access to the Greenway from their homes? And so that is really the inception of the development.
Folks, if you will, there's many of us that have not heard this except watching it on video. So if you will, please let them give the presentation. If we can't hear it, then we need to be able to understand what the project is. I'd appreciate that. Mr. Roundtree.
Thank you. As well as an active outdoor community, there's going to have a lot of resort-like qualities. Inside the development itself, there's over a mile worth of walking trails and bike trails within the development, not including the connection to the Greenway. There's over 40 acres of land that's undeveloped. If you look at the master plan, it's green. There's a lot of open space associated with this development. We're going with a townhome type of home. And one of the emphasis there is that it clusters around green spaces. And so by clustering the homes, you provide more open space that can be used by the residents within the community. The development overall will have enhanced streetscapes, sidewalks. It will be a gated community. Each of the neighborhood pods will be gated, although there will be public streets to development as well. There'll be 2 amenity centers, as Bill mentioned. That'll be really high-quality amenity centers that will be used by the residents within the Hidden River Estates. With that in mind, I just want to walk through the different kind of homes and streets that will be available. On this diagram, the bold yellow lines represent the public streets that will be part of this project. So one will connect to Racket Club, one will connect to Eastview, and then there will be a street that services the estate lots to the north. Everything that's a little bit lighter color tan, those are all private streets that'll be gated in terms of the development areas. There are 5 types of townhomes that are part of this project, and we'd like to walk through each type pretty briefly. The first type of home is called the River Row. Those are related, those are located adjacent to the Greenway. Those will be the ones that'll be, in closest proximity to the Greenway. We'd like to mention that from the Greenway, there's already a natural buffer that we're going to preserve, as well as a lot of our stormwater treatment is between any of our development and the pathway itself. And then the buildings have rear entry parking, so even the parking lots will give us more separation. So we have over 100 feet of separation between the Greenway and our first building. So we feel like that's a very positive component to the development. There are 64 units that are considered River Row units. These are 3 to 4 bedroom homes. Minimum square footage is 2,000 square feet up to 3,500 square feet. They're 3-story structures with a rooftop patio. The price range for these will be between $400,000 and $600,000. They're 2-car garages with a 2-car carport, and the roof of the carport is really a deck on the second floor of the development. So these units will have rooftop patios as well as a deck area to take advantage of the natural views they'll have looking out over the Greenway. They'll be higher interior finishes and very nice quality living units. The next homes are the villas. Now the villas are in the center portion, and they're basically represented by that bold red line. Now that's important to understand what the villas are, because the villas are 196 units. They're 2 to 3 bedroom. They're 1,300 square feet to 2,200 square feet, and their price point is going to be between $225 and $275. At least that's what we project. They'll have full access to all the amenities as well as the Greenway. We feel like this is important to emphasize because there's been a lot of talk about this being just a high-end gated community. This is going to be a very age-diverse community because this is basically a starter home within a very nice development. So we're glad to have the opportunity for people who are looking for their first home to be able to live in Hidden River Estates, as well as people who are looking for their last home.
Mr. Roundtree, you said that the minimum square footage on the villas is 1,300, but the book says 1,400. So is it 13 or 14?
14.
Okay, thank you.
The landings are the next component, and they're, I'm sorry, let me go back. I already pressed the button. They're along, it's important to understand these units. These are consistent with what Brian's already built, Mr. Burns has already built in terms of General's Landing. This is a very familiar product to most of us here. There's 106 of those units. They're 2 to 3 bedrooms. They're 1,400 square feet to 2,800 square feet. They're 2-car garages. The price point will be between $260,000 and $330,000, and they're the primary units that'll be against the adjacent neighborhood. So a lot of the concern was overall the concern of the development, but we wanted to make sure that we were sensitive to the adjacent relationships that Hidden River would have to the existing community. And these townhomes will be basically the ones that border those properties, but they'll be very consistent in terms of value, size. They'll be front entry garages. They won't be rear entry garages, so there won't be any vehicular activity on the rear of these buildings. They'll be more of a traditional yard on the backside. We're excited about this home offering. This is called the cottages. The cottages are, as Bill mentioned, they're basically the majority of the red units. There are more cottage units than any other unit in the development. There's 236 cottage units. They're all single-level living, 2 to 3 bedrooms, 1,800 square feet to 2,500 square feet with a 2-car garage. Their price points between $290,000 and $350,000, and really they're age targeted towards 55 and up. Mr. Burns would like to make them as much as possible ADA compliant. So we feel like Hidden River will offer a starter home for those who want to move into the community, as well as homes that are designed for those who are looking to downsize and call this their retirement home. Lastly will be the estate lots. There are 18 of those lots. They're on the northern portion of the property. They're outlined in red in this slide. They're all custom homes. Their minimum square footage is 2,500 square feet. They would be priced between $500,000 and $800,000. Again, they're custom homes, so that could range even more than that. The lot sizes on these particular lots would be anywhere from 3/4 acre to 2 acres, and they'll be designed with the sensitivity of the existing neighborhood, but there will be an architectural review committee associated with the HOA that would monitor the architectural character of these particular homes. And as was mentioned, amenities are a big part of this development. There'll be two amenity centers. One to the north is basically a part of the Phase 1 development. It'll be a key entry element to the main entrance to Hidden River on the initial phase. It'll have a large swimming pool, covered pavilion with restrooms and changing rooms, a bike rack, and a mail kiosk. That amenity center will have easy access to the Cason Trailhead as well as the Greenway system. And as was mentioned by Mr. Huddleston, there's a kayak launch that Mr. Burns is working with the Parks Department to coordinate, so there'll be a public launch for kayaks. There'll also be a private launch within the development that we'd like to develop as well. This is a picture of the northern amenity center, the North Amenity Center. Now, this is taking advantage of Mr. John's, the John's residence. This will be retrofitting the home and creating more like a spa-like quality to this particular amenity center. It'll have workout rooms, cardio rooms, a yoga room, golf simulator, and may even have an activity director and a personal trainer. It's really going to be a high-end type of feel. Around this particular amenity center, there'll be plenty of open space, green lawns, and areas for play. It'll also have a basketball court, sand volleyball court, tennis court, and pickleball courts. There'll be two pools with cabanas. There'll be a pond, the existing pond that's there will stay with a gazebo, and there'll be bocce ball and shuffleboard courts. So Mr. Burns want to make sure that any of the residents within the community and within Hidden River Estates would have plenty of access to outdoor activities and would really enjoy that kind of quality lifestyle. Lastly, on this same slide that's in that bubble in red is a commercial node. And basically, it's a localized neighborhood commercial development. And what we're hoping for there is that would house things like a small shop for groceries. It could be a salon or whatever wants to fill that space. But we're hoping that it will help service internally the Hidden River community as well as the adjacent neighbors. This is along the public road, would have public access to it. So it may take away some of those traffic concerns where someone just having to go out and get some milk or get some bread and having to leave the development in order to get that. Now they can get it within the development. So with that in mind, our whole purpose has been to create a high quality, Mr. Burns would like it to be the highest quality development. And Murfreesboro, we've all been on board with that. We want to preserve as much green space as possible. We want to respect the Greenway. We want to enjoy the Greenway and have access to it. But we want to respect the natural character that it has now by keeping that natural buffer. And the folks who live in Hidden River will have full advantage of the Greenway as well as the trailhead, as well as the amenities within the development. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce Mr. Burns. He'll talk about some other characteristics of the development. Thank you very much for a chance to present to you.
My name is Brian Burns with Blue Sky Construction, and there's not much I want to say. They did a really good job presenting our project to us. I just appreciate everybody's work on this. This has been going on for a long time, and I know you've got a lot of phone calls from me and from other people too, and I appreciate that. The one thing I will promise on this is if this neighborhood gets passed, this will be the nicest neighborhood in Rutherford County. If any other developer from out of town comes and tells you they're going to build a neighborhood nicer, this is what it'll be compared to. That's always been my goal in this neighborhood, is to make this the nicest neighborhood. It's got the property to do it, and we've got the amenity center that I don't think anybody in Middle Tennessee has an amenity center as nice as what we're going to do. If there's any questions, I'll be here for any other questions. Thank you, guys.
Any questions? I haven't opened just a few minutes, we haven't opened the public hearing yet. Thank you. All right, we're going to need to conduct a public hearing. Yes.
If I could ask one question. Mr. Huddleston mentioned the roadway that was going over to Highway 99. Could you describe that roadway to us a little bit? I know there's a bridge involved. Will there be sidewalks as well? Are we talking about a 2-lane road, a 3-lane road? What are we talking about there as far as that roadway that's?
Talking about the new direct access that we've got State Route 99.
Right.
It's a 2-lane roadway. It widens to 3-lane roadway as it goes through the apartment complex. And then once it gets to Barfield Road, there's a full complement of about 6 lanes on this roadway. There'll be two dual left turn lanes, a through lane, a right turn lane, and a lane coming in.
So for the people who live close to Cason Trail, where the trailhead is there. Would that not be a more direct route for them out to Highway 99 than if they were?
Absolutely. This road can carry up to 14,000 vehicles per day. If our entire development went on this road, which it won't, that'd only be 5,200 vehicles per day. So then, you know, you add the apartment traffic, and you've still got plenty of capacity for anybody else who wants to use that roadway.
And it will be open to the public. It's not being gated off in any sense.
That's correct. It's a public road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any questions for staff or the applicant? Okay, we're going to need to conduct a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, if you'll come to the podium, if you'll direct all your comments to the council, we're going to be making notes. So at the end of the public hearing, we'll get all of those questions, or as many as we can answered that we can. So if you'll keep all your comments directed to the council. I've got a timer up here. How many people do we have that are wanting to speak? If you don't mind, if you'll raise your hand. Okay, I'm going to do our best. We're going to start with 3 minutes. If we see that we can get everyone in, then I'll be as liberal as I possibly can, but I want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to speak. So I have a handy-dandy timer here that we'll keep up with. So anyone wishing to speak for or against, please come to the podium.
My name is Stephen Odell. I would like to thank the mayor, the vice mayor, and the council for the opportunity to speak. I suffer no delusions, you know, from what I've heard, that they've made every effort they can to accommodate every possible facet of this that they can see to make it good for people who need new homes. Obviously, they're making new humans all the time, and they're going to need homes. But I suffer no delusions either about ultimately, it's usually the worship of the almighty dollar that wins out. Now, my questions, I don't know that I can direct them to the council. I believe I'd have to direct it to these three gentlemen, because unless there's somebody on the council who is an expert on wildlife migration, I don't know what to tell you. So my question, first of all, let me say, I'm not an earth worshiper, a tree hugger, or anything of that nature, but I am one of these guys that was raised by my parents to appreciate the outdoors and nature itself. And living out on the Cason Lane area by New Salem, I have seen a lot of deer. And I've enjoyed watching those deer, and a lot of squirrels at times, and a lot of rabbits. I've found that the rabbits are totally disappearing now because of all the new housing that has, the trees that have been torn out, they're all gone. I'm wondering how much of this property that they're talking about, what percentage of it is wooded? And have they done anything to study the impact on the wildlife? Because when you take away the opportunity in a certain area for the deer to have food, they're going to be crossing highways to get to other areas. That is not only going to put them into danger, it is going to put the people driving those areas into danger. And I, over the years, have seen way too many cases of people who have been injured terribly because of that type of thing. So my question would have to be, I believe, directed to these three gentlemen, to Mr. Huddleston, Mr. Roundtree, and Mr. Byrne.
We'll get that answered.
Thank you.
Okay, give Mr. Liddell, is that right? Odell. And what's your address, Mr. Odell?
2263 Cason Lane.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Mayor McFarland and Murfreesboro City Council members, my name is Warren Tormey. I live on North Spring Street in downtown Murfreesboro. Thank you for this opportunity to voice my concerns about the Hidden River Development rezoning request. We are going on a year now in our efforts to get the city planners to see the wisdom in voting against this zoning change. The vote you cast tonight will reverberate in the coming decades and will shape the kind of community we leave to the next generation, not just in 2035, but also in 2045, 2055, and beyond. In recent months, the council has debated a field of projects, including proposed developments at Pretoria Falls and Asbury Road. Well, we are all generally aware of that the course of residential and commercial development proceeds ahead of the pace of infrastructure development. And I thank Mr. Martin for pointing that out to me. There are costs to bear when the former dramatically outpaces the latter. These projects have forced our planners to consider the limitations of our current infrastructure funding and other aspects of our city's growth. The Hidden River development proposal is of the same order. As things currently stand, within the proposal is as things currently stand, the proposal is a stark deviation from the goals of the 2035 master plan, and the infrastructure's not there. Within our group of concerned citizens, my lofty responsibility has been to focus on matters relating to water and sewer resources. So I'll just use some quotes from recent city documents to confirm the infrastructure limitations in this key growth area. I've noticed 4 documents. In the interest of time, I'm just going to read quotes from 2. The first is the Murfreesboro Water MWRD Sanitary Sewer Allocation Study from July 8th, 2019. This document focuses primarily on the Cason Lane, New Salem Corridor District as its case study. And this is a quote from that report. Assimilative capacity of the West Fork Stones River may be the ultimate bottleneck. Therefore, limiting sewer allocation from the Water Resource Recovery Facility's ability to treat wastewater will be further assessed. If WWRF treatment capacity or WFRS assimilative capacity are the controlling factors, development density may be further reduced in order to uniformly apply sewer allocation to future land use. That's the first one. The second one is from the Water Resources Board meeting agenda dated August 27th, 2019. This is a discussion of the draft of the sewer allocation ordinance, which you are all familiar with. I believe that went into effect in early December. And again, direct quote. In summary, MWRD has allowed density of development to occur approximately 12% greater than planned, or 4.3 single-family units per acre versus the originally planned 3.8 single-family units SFUs per acre. In order to adjust future density, in order to get back to the originally proposed density of 3.8 SFUs per acre, a 21% reduction is necessary, or maintaining an average of 3.4 SFUs per acre over the remaining acreage within the New Salem Highway Basin. Okay, to conclude, all 3 of these documents, I'm sorry, 2 of the documents, I didn't quote from one, both of these documents point to the pressures on water and sewer infrastructures in light of our city's current growth trends, and I think we can find agreement in the point that the heavy pace of development will bring costs for future generations to bear. My understanding is that the sewer allocation ordinance was signed into law in early December, and I do hope it was implemented not to serve its select communities or constituents, but with the goals to ensure responsible and sustainable growth and adequate sewer infrastructure and usage regulations that are equitable for all of Murfreesboro's residents.
Mr. Torrey, I'm going to have to get you to wrap up
One
pretty
more
quick.
sentence.
Okay, all right.
Again, the infrastructure is just not there.
I wish we were in Congress and that we could do that, but the
To
gentleman
that
from
end.
Murfreesboro, we can't do that.
To that end, I urge you to consider voting against the Hidden River Development zoning change request from single RS to higher density PUD, which would place the burden for the choices we make about our community today on future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Torrey. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor McFarland, Madam Vice Mayor, and council members. My name is Mike Green. I live on Gaston Court. We're going to hear all types of information tonight for you to consider. Traffic, density, sewer, crime, infrastructure, fire and police protection, just to name a few. Actually, there are more reasons not to approve this development than to approve it. Why did the city spend close to $1 million and then only pick and choose when the 2035 plan would be utilized? This proposed road south behind the water towers is not going to be the magic formula for the traffic. The widening is not going to help with all the other future developments that are proposed up on Highway 99, the Costco developments that are on the east side of the river. and they're not even completed yet. Traffic is horrible now. Road rage is ever present. We have no police presence whatsoever on River Rock. It's a speedway. I get passed at least once a week by cars going 60, 70 miles per hour when I'm doing the speed limit. We have plenty of houses that are up for sale in our neighborhood as a result of this proposal. As a matter of fact, numerous members of our group are not here because they've sold their houses and moved. Is it really worth all the trouble that Mr. Burns is having to go through to make this land developable? He's had to have numerous revisions. The location is not suitable for condos, or it would have already been developed. As our elected city officials, how can you not represent the majority of people that are against this instead of the interest of just one party? With all of the negatives that are surrounding this proposal, honestly, your decision is quite simple. You don't have to approve this. Mr. Burns can already build single-family homes, and there should be no reason that our elected city officials to approve the rezoning. I ask you, would you want this in your neighborhood? One thing that's been said to me over and over as we've done this, that this is already a done deal, that we're wasting our time and our money. The council has already decided. Why are you going over there again tonight? If this is true, then it would truly be a travesty that our elected city officials would not remain impartial to the concerns of the citizens that have elected you. We put our trust in you, and we hope that you will do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green.
Evening. Craig Higgins, 718 Oakwood Circle. There are 37 homes in our neighborhood. It's an isolated, quiet, older neighborhood with small streets. They're 18 to 23 feet wide throughout our circle. There's no striping, there's no curbs, there's no gutters, there's no sidewalks. Because we don't have sidewalks, all the kids in our neighborhood use the streets. They play in the streets, they play ball in the streets, they ride their bikes back and forth, they walk back and forth to each other's house in the streets. 10 years that I've lived there, there's never once been an incident of an accident involving a car and a kid because we know each other. We look out for each other. That all changes the second you turn Dr. John's driveway into a city street. Based on their traffic study itself, our Racket Club Oakwood Circle neighborhood will bear an additional 821 daily trips generated by this project alone. That doesn't include through traffic coming off of Dodd, and it doesn't include traffic going to their commercial center. That's almost 1,000 more cars coming through our tiny little neighborhood streets every single day. That's a significant threat to public safety of the residents in this small subdivision. We request that the north access point be omitted from the plan altogether, or at the very least, it should be permanently closed to through traffic and accessible only to emergency vehicles. Also, the developer should be required to build the road to New Salem first before he can begin construction on the development. My concern there is that what they showed us, he only appears to be responsible for half of that road. And how do we have assurances that the other half will also get built when he builds his half of that road? A traffic study was done by Bill Huddleston, a person with a vested interest in this project and seen it through to completion. In any scientific study, we would call that an inherent bias. And that study would be disqualified because of that bias. You know, the traffic study itself is inadequate, it's outdated, it doesn't take into account the cumulative impacts of future projects that have already been approved, and it doesn't include construction vehicle impacts on the community. One of the pivotal discussion points of this project is the inherent safety issues that come from the additional impact on traffic. I would urge the city not to be complacent and accept and adopt the developer's math without question. Why won't the city require an unbiased, independent study to be done to verify the traffic and safety impacts? we hope that you're not content to just take their word for it. Throughout this process, the developer's been also providing tax revenue projections, and it seems that those have been accepted and adopted by the city without question. They presented a figure in excess of $600,000. That figure appears to be based on the fully completed project. That's not the way those tax dollars are going to come in. They're going to come in small bits and pieces as the segments of the project are completed over the next 10 to 15 years. So I think that that number is specious. It'd be nice if we would require them to show their work, and better yet, get an independent estimate done, so we're not just left to take their word for it. A lot of you met with us personally. Thank you for that. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for opening up the meeting tonight so that we can come up and be heard. We appreciate that. We want to believe in our city government. We want to have hope in our city, and we appreciate you listening to our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins.
My name is Bob Armstrong. I live on the much maligned River Rock Boulevard. I'm interested in going early because I want to go home and watch what I hope is a successful recording of the greatest Jeopardy show of all time, which was so inconsiderately scheduled to conflict with this meeting. Ladies and gentlemen of the council, I was not here when the city fathers dedicated the Greenway, but I imagine that it went something like this. Behold Murfreesboro, what we have wrought for you with your tax dollars, a serene slice of nature, a bucolic setting apart from the madding crowd. Enjoy it while you may, because we're going to take it back from you. Well, not all at once, of course, just say 41 acres at a time. I am not opposed to free enterprise. I believe that the developers are entitled to make a profit or an investment on this, in this property. Some of my peers have suggested a compromise, a setback of 200 feet from the river. I don't know, that might be a little too much, but perhaps 150, 100 would not be too much to ask. I confess that I have only walked that parkway 4 or 5 times in the 20 years I have lived here. But I do drive River Rock Boulevard and Cason Lane daily. My learned gentleman from the engineering department has spoken proudly about the diversification of the traffic dispersing through the neighborhood. Guess where all that dispersed traffic ends up? Cason Lane, Old Fork Parkway, and River Rock Boulevard. That's where it ends up. As a last gasp of sanity, I'm going to urge you once again to heed Holy Scripture, which says very clearly, yea, though I drive through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, except trying to drive through that intersection of Cason Lane and Old Fork Parkway. Compromise, councilors, compromise. That's what government is about.
Thank you. Mr. Armstrong, thank you, and at least you didn't tell us you were going back home to watch The Bachelor, so we appreciate that.
Hello, my name is Mariah Phillips, and I live at 1332 Dodd Trail. In December of 2018, the residents of the Cason Grove community first heard of the proposed high-end luxury condo development coming into our already overcrowded and well-established neighborhood. Beyond the beautiful sales pitch that Huddleston Steel presented then and continues to market now, the residents all saw at that time what I hope the city sees now. Squeezing more families into this neighborhood beyond the original zoning requirements currently allowed is not what is smart for our city. It's like trying to pump blood through an already clogged artery. Even with the stints and diversions and new pathways, a person is still going to have to watch their salt intake and be smarter with their diet. So too should the city. We need to go on a development diet. We need to make plans to deal with the baggage that we already carry in the city, the overdevelopment that has already been approved, and the lack of infrastructure in place to handle it. So I understand that there is an addition to the road leading to 99 that is thought to be the magic bullet to this project. Instead of the magic bullet, to me, it appears to be more like a fad diet. Big promises made, but no evidence that any true benefit will result to the existing residents. I'd like to ask, how many apartments and homes in the new development that was mentioned here tonight are going to exist in this 2-lane road they're going to build to connect to 99? And has that already been purchased and approved? That's a question that I have for you guys tonight. We need an independent traffic study done before this project is approved, not one that is put together by the engineer for the project some random morning in August, but one that considers the current and future traffic patterns and impacts on the community. And then, if changes are made, such as they have been made repeatedly over the last 13 months to this project, a new study should be required, discovering how those changes will impact the existing roads, throughways, and infrastructure. The city should expect that, require that, before any increased density is approved in zoning. The existing zoning is set for a reason, and without proper investigation and thoughtful reasoning, it should remain that way. Zoning increases should be the exception and not the rule. Let's not forget that Brian Burns bought this property zoned RS10. He can develop at RS10 with no problems, and unfortunately for us, the residents, no legal arguments against the property rights to do so. Let him build on what he's got. How long are you going to allow these developers to continue to squeeze us into as small a space as you will authorize before you say enough? I look forward to this council hearing the cries of the thousands of citizens, many who are residents of this neighborhood, that are asking you to pay attention to us, the people who vote for you. Pay attention to what will improve our quality of life. Density is the issue. We cannot continue to consider Murfreesboro the great place we all believe it is if our schools are overcrowded, our sewer discharge is at capacity, our electric grid is outdated. I guess we're changing that today. And our ability to get in and out of our neighborhoods is prohibitive because of the traffic. Increasing the density on this project without a proper traffic study, with or without a road to 99, is irresponsible and unaccountable. I hope you are paying attention to us, because we are paying attention to you. We have been fighting this increase in density for over a year. We have been standing up for ourselves, and now our hope is that you will stand up for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
That will be tough to follow. Those were some good presentations. Some of them are some of mine too. Tough. Let's see if I can do it. Sorry. So my name is Corey Colley, registered nurse. I live at 4707 Scottish Drive, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, 37128. Hoorah! One of the greatest and fastest places growing in Tennessee, as we can see here tonight with everyone talking. Mr. Burns and everything in his company, I have nothing against capitalism or stuff, the American dream, buy something cheap and build something better. I applaud you, but here tonight I'm here to object to it. I've written as fast as I can, I'll talk as quick as I can and try to get this under 3 minutes. There's too many bad points to talk about, and I can't just pick out one, so I'm gonna go down the list. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of us on Facebook and other places. We're at Nissan, hospitals, churches, World Outreach Church, and we're talking to each other. We're not just workers, we're not just neighbors, we're not just people, we are voters. Remember that. Any spot in the world on Cation Trail would be a better spot than where it's at now. There's have to be over 1 million plus acres in Rutherford County to develop something. The city, as we ever heard about, this was probably never to be developed. It's FEMA flood zone. The Allens owned it originally. Dr. Johns owned it. He has passed away, God bless him. It's a bad idea in so many places. There's other places I'd love to see this, obviously. The biggest points right off the bat, just the most obvious, is there's really only 3 entrances and exits to a place with 1,700 cars. I was at one of the previous meetings, and there were one or two of them that were denied because they had 20 units and 2 entrances, or maybe 3, and it was shot down by someone sitting right here. I think it was a female, And that surprised me. We have 1,700 extra cars and 700 units with 3 entrances and exits. Fire, earthquake, disasters. It's a bit extreme, but anything could happen. Smaller projects weren't approved at all, which really caught me off guard. 3 exits. I would like to say, we've been hit with a trash can tax. We've been hit with a property tax, a $14.5 million soccer complex up in the Siegel. Thank you very much, City Council. I've heard my constituents and my people talk about irresponsible choices in voting. We've put you here. We've put you here. We've put you here. We've put everyone else here. I believe that Mr. Wilson is a co-owner of Huddleston Steel, which I think that's big time bias in this whole process right here, but I don't know that for a fact. That's what I've heard.
Well, I can feel pretty confident to say that's not true. So if we don't know it for a fact,
Okay.
it's probably
Then
not good to
I do
say it.
I do appreciate that. I didn't know that. I just heard it the last thing. Our last election, Hillary Clinton was going to crush Donald Trump. Trump wasn't even close. What happened is he appealed to voters who's tired of this, tired of decisions, tired of getting ripped off, tired of excuses of why we need to raise our property tax, why we need to raise our trash can tax, why we get to raise all this stuff. There's countless of other ways to raise revenue and not be hitting us with all this stuff. That's why Trump won. And again, we're voters.
Mr. Colley, thank you. Your time's up.
Okay. At the end of this, if this doesn't work out for us, I will openly file a Freedom of Information Act and find out everyone who's been talking. We will see you at the polls.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, Mayor,
Thank
Vice Mayor, my name is Jacqueline Brown. I live at 2302 Riverstone Drive. I've talked to most of you several times. I've been at this for a year now. I do appreciate several of the changes. I love the fact that they finally have a construction entrance. However, it's not in writing. They're not building all of it. In fact, one of their lovely slides said very clearly to be constructed by someone else, and the deal isn't done yet. So if the city approves something on a promise that's not in writing, I'm going to have some pretty strong misgivings about my city council, because those promises don't mean anything. I don't care how wonderful a person he is. If it's not legally actionable, then you guys should not be making a decision based on it, because then you have nothing to hold him to make sure that actually happens. So that is still a significant concern I have with this whole process. Another significant concern that I actually haven't heard raised is the fact that the development isn't really in keeping with the surrounding houses. He's talking about 3-story homes. You see any 3-story homes in our neighborhood? I must have missed them after being there over 2 years. There aren't any. And he talks about wanting to preserve the beauty of nature and look down along the greenway. He maybe should go to the greenway, because it's gone. There's no greenway there anymore. It is a way. His lovely condos are not going to go look out over nature. They're going to be looking at an indoor gun range, 2 construction or manufacturing plants, and they're going to be lulled to sleep by the lovely sounds of 24 all the time. I can hear it now from my house. When I moved in 2 years ago, you couldn't hear Highway 24 from my house. Now, because of the cut down on the other side, that's all you hear. So I also have a lot of concerns about the success of this project. If it's based on the beauty of nature, maybe you all should go out and take a look at it, because it's not there anymore. And I don't know many people that are going to spend $600,000 to be that close to a major highway and listen to it day and night, because that is what they will hear now. And there is no changing that, because those deals are already done. That is what has already happened in this area. If we're going to increase the density, we're not going to get this nice development. We're going to create a place where we're going to have vacancies. And vacancies definitely increase crime. And those are several of the other concerns that I don't feel have been addressed. And I hope the City Council are going to take into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
Good evening. My name is Richard Snyder. I live at 2831 Stonehenge Drive, which is on the west side of Cason Lane. I've been a resident of this community for 25-plus years. 20 years I lived on the east side of town in Scotland Acres and moved to the west side of town because of necessity of family being close to my mother-in-law. It was a shock moving over there, facing traffic, missing the green space that we had on the other side of town. And I'd just like to share a couple of concerns that I have regarding this development and the impact that it has on the community. We've heard about the access points where traffic from the development will be moving in and through the residential areas, but they ultimately will end up on River Rock, Cason Lane, and from what I have witnessed in my 4 years living on the west side of town, it's going to end up there at Cason Lane, River Rock Road, and Highway 96. A couple of weeks ago, I started looking into this project because I was very concerned about the traffic already. And what I learned first, I contacted the city engineering department, and there I discovered first, before I pulled the proposal, that in visiting with the city engineering department, they shared, and I'll quote from an email that was sent to me, regarding upcoming road projects. I think one that you may be interested in is the River Rock Connector Bridge. Although this project isn't close to the Cason 96 intersection, it will provide another route to your River Rock area. The bridge will be completed in the spring of 2023 and will connect Beasy Road to Cason Trail, which leads to River Rock Road. That's from the Costco commercial area coming over to the Cason Trail Road, and apparently through the new road that's being proposed, going from the development to Highway 99. The intersection improvements will also be occurring at Warrior and New Salem around the same time. I'm not sure this will be an easier route for you, but it will alleviate some of the traffic coming off of 24 and turning into Cason Lane in those neighborhoods. So the gist of this is that not only will this be this new connector road, with this bridge connecting over to Beasy Road, we will now have a track for the commercial development coming from the commercial development back into the residence and back over onto Cason Lane, River Rock Road. Second, I heard reference to the 2040 Major Transportation Plan. And if you look closely at that, the long-range study findings and recommendations, there were 5 broken, I'll use that term, intersections or areas in our road traffic and facilities today. One of those, again, is Cason Lane, River Rock, Highway 96. And in that 2040 plan, they proposed solutions, and they ranked the road projects, 75 of them. The intersection, the only proposed relief for River Road, Cason Lane, was, as referenced, a flyover bridge there at the old Racket Club area over to New Salem Road, and originally it was proposed to be completed by 2024. Since this report from 2014 to 2018, we have seen a 9% increase in the traffic volume on Cason Lane, River Rock, in that intersection. The proposed plan before us today will increase the volume by an additional 16%. So where are we with that? Again, when I contacted the city engineering department, ST1 number 6, this is the flyover bridge, it was the number 6 project listed in priority. The River Rock and SR 99 Connector Road is unfortunately not slated for the next 5 years, but can always change year to year.
Mr. Shadow, I'm going to have to ask you to come to a conclusion, please.
So this connector, even if approved, would not be completed till 2030. Okay? The traffic and the road conditions out there are horrible. All of these intersections that we're talking about are at the entrance of the Cason Trailhead Park, which is the sole green space area on this side of town. And for all those reasons, I don't think it's appropriate to approve this project.
Thank you, Mr. Sider.
Good evening, council members. My name is Sam Ricatti, and I've grown up the majority of my life in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Along with that, I am now a student at MTSU. Being a student at MTSU means that, along with almost 20,000 other students, we are the future of Murfreesboro. And
Mr.
it's
Ricatti,
important.
Your address, please?
3557 Southridge Boulevard.
Okay, thank you.
We are the future of Murfreesboro, and it's important for us to look at this through sustainable growth. As a student, I have always had a passion for looking at things from public policy, and I've always had a passion for politics. Now, I beg you to look at this from the perspective of 20 years from now. I grew up enjoying going to Barfield Park or going to the Greenway or going to Old Fort Park with my family. And now, as I walk Barfield Park and go down the trail, the 1.5-mile trail that we've always loved as a family, all I see now is I-24. All I hear now are the cars going down, when I used to hear the birds chirping. Now I ask you, is this really what we want for our future? Do we want this unsustainable amount of growth, one of the fastest growing cities in the nation? But it's not very sustainable. I have to spend almost 30 minutes in traffic just to make it to campus, sometimes being late for class, when realistically we need to look at this from a sustainable growth aspect rather than a materialistic and money-based approach. I mean, it's a $600,000 increase in tax revenue, sure, but we're losing wildlife, and we're losing, honestly, any motivation for us to live here. Like, as a 17-year-old, I genuinely don't look at Murfreesboro as a place that I want to spend the rest of my life and marry somebody and have kids, because there's no wildlife to go with them. There's none of the parks that I used to enjoy with my parents. None of that looks like it's going to be there when I have a wife and kids. So is this truly the legacy we want to leave behind? The legacy I want for my kids and for them to raise their kids and their kids? I just want you to look at it through the future instead of now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Skidoo.
Good evening, Mayor McFarland, council members. My name is Michael Watson. I live at 1437 Factors Walk, and I've been in the Murfreesboro area for the last 12 years and have lived in the Cason Lane area for the last 7. 2 years ago, my wife and I, we bought a house on Factors Walk, as I previously said, which is around 1.5 miles from the proposed development. We make regular use of the Cason Trailhead Greenway, and most frequently we go to the dog park. And we enjoy the calm, peaceful setting over there. But that's not what I'm going to talk about tonight. That's not what I want to focus on. I want to focus on the traffic that this development is going to bring in. The traffic impact of such a large development on our already overcapacity area will be an undue burden on the current residents. As someone who has lived on Highway 99 in New Salem, on the Cason Lane side, and on the Highway 96 side of St. Andrews, I am very aware of the road infrastructure in that area and how it is barely handling the current load. And it has been that way for a long time. Before I moved into that area, I remember one time using the intersection at River Rock and Cason Lane, and due to the Cason Lane gridlock, I was unable to execute a left turn onto River Rock. That was 8 to 9 years ago. It's not gotten better since. Traveling Cason Lane towards Highway 96, towards Old Fort, at certain hours of the day is something residents on that side of town simply decide not to do because it's usually undoable. Well before entering the commercial end of Cason Lane, it is not uncommon to find a long line of cars well into the residential side, not far from the movie theater. In fact, I believe that the new development's traffic impact will be felt mostly in the Cason Lane, Highway 99 section, or Highway 96 section of the development, around the movie theater, the Kroger, all of that. Though it will undoubtedly be felt all over the residential area as well. Our part of town is full of kids playing outdoors and riding their bikes down their neighborhood streets. A massive influx of new vehicles will needing to navigate out of those streets is not ideal. Cason Trail between Stony Meadow and the park, the proposed main entrance of the new development, is one of the streets that it would not be ideal for the influx of new traffic to be on. This is a very popular route for families. They bike to the Greenway. I pass children on bikes all the time heading to the dog park. In the proposed development's outline, you don't even have to get to page 3.
Mr. Watson, I'm going to have to get a conclusion. We're well into almost 4 minutes now.
Sorry.
Thank you.
You don't have to get to page 3 to see that they're going to add around 2,366 parking spaces, and they're pretty much going to get to about 1,500 new cars in the area, and we just can't handle that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Watson.
Mayor McFarland, members of City Council, my name is Chris Barnes. I reside at 1237 Cason Trail. The main concerns with the project include the traffic study that was conducted and the overall safety of the neighborhood due to the increased traffic. The traffic study that was conducted by Huddleston Steel Engineering monitored traffic flow at specific intersections within the neighborhood. The intersection of Cason Trail and Stony Meadow Drive was monitored on January 23rd, 2019. Anyone who lives or is familiar with this area knows the traffic counts will be lower during winter times along Cason Trail, specifically due to the Greenway, when peak use of the Greenway is in the summer. Only monitoring traffic along Cason Trail for one day during the winter is an oversight. The developer has acquired an additional 16 acres south of Cason Trail for a new connector road to State Route 99. This may address many concerns with traffic in this area, but I also encourage you to require an additional traffic study of the area during peak times that the Greenway is in use, and then incorporate the new connector road to the traffic study. The developer has committed this connector road will be completed prior to the construction of the development and will serve as the primary construction access to the development. When reviewing the phasing plan, Phase 1A along Cason Trail will be constructed first. Where will be the construction entrance for the remaining phases? Will the construction entrance always be from this new connector road? I recommend city staff review the proposed construction entrance and make sure safeguards are in place for residents who will still have to navigate the proposed construction entrance in order to access the Greenway from the neighborhood. As a father of 4, I'm concerned with the overall safety of the neighborhood due to the increased traffic. The Greenway is a great amenity, and it's the reason my wife and I purchased our home in this neighborhood in 2009. My family and I frequently walk to the Greenway. Our neighborhood does not have sidewalks. City staff has recommended that sidewalks be added to this area, and I encourage City Council to mandate this. In conclusion, this has been an overall very emotional night for me. The council's decisions tonight for the development impact my neighborhood. Your decision to sell the electric department tonight impact my career. I believe the next decade is not only crucial to my family, my career, but also for the city of Murfreesboro. The future is indeed bright. The council will face many more difficult decisions, and I am thankful to each one of you for your diligence in considering all aspects associated with these decisions and the impacts they have on Murfreesboro. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes.
now or never. I do have a list of community talking points.
Name and address, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Barbara Higgins at 718 Oakwood Circle. I have a list of community talking points that I'd like to distribute to council. Would that be okay?
Sure. If you'll give it to Josh here, he'll get that to us. Thank you. Just thanks, Josh.
I did my best to try to summarize what I think the entire community's concerns are and the points that you'll hear tonight. I sent you all an email last night with details regarding how this project impacts specifically Oakwood Circle and Racket Club Drive by the north entrance. I would stress that this is probably one of the most impacted neighborhoods. I've spoken personally with some of you about those impacts and the 821 vehicles that would pass through this small neighborhood every day. I would also stress that the closure of this entrance and/or its restriction to emergency access only is incredibly important to this community. But I don't want to repeat all of the points that I made in my email last night. Instead, I would like to appeal to all of you as fellow citizens, as our elected officials who are charged with serving and protecting the public interest of this community. What I ask at this moment is your willing suspension of disbelief in what you think you will hear tonight. Please don't be jaded by the voices that have come before us or by the pretty pictures that are put forth by the developer. You may reasonably be thinking that we all here, all 50 to 100 of us, are like every other resident who doesn't want development in their neighborhood or in their backyard. But on some level, you must realize and know that these are the voices that elected you, put their trust in you, and need you to do the right thing. This is a tipping point project, the chance and opportunity to set good precedents for all development yet to come. And believe it or not, yet to come, you all are seeking a way to balance the interests in this decision. And believe it or not, that is something that is very doable here. On the one hand, we have the basic interests of the developer and the city, possibly in providing quality housing, of course. On the other hand, you have the interests of a community, an entire community that does not want this project. These interests can all be served without the zone change. First, development for the
I'm going to have to ask you to
development is still allowed if the zone change is not granted. Second, the city can retain oversight by the following: working with the developer on a revised plan. The fact that he's been here a year is testimony to the fact that he hasn't been listening to the neighborhoods. Something less than 622 homes. Partnering with adjacent commercial properties to the east for improved access and circulation.
Ms. Higgins, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Without this type of action, one developer's dream project
Thank you, Ms. Higgins.
becomes a nightmare for hundreds of residents.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm sure you're very weary, but I did want to share as well. My name is Lenore Culbertson, and I live on Racket Club Drive. My street is 23 feet and 4 inches wide. There are no curbs, no drains, no sidewalks. I went and measured. My car is 6 feet 4 inches wide, so you put 2 cars on the street, and that's about 13 feet. Then you add the cars that are parked on the street, that's another potential 12 feet, and that pretty much takes up Racket Club Drive. Now, I have several orthopedic issues, so I try to walk on my street at least 3 or 4 times a day. And I will not share how many inches that I add to that total. But anyway, I walk on the street because I have trouble with, I'm unstable on uneven terrain. So I walk on the street, and sometimes I walk with my dog, and sometimes I don't walk with my dog because there's so many children playing on that street, and the dog just gets too overly excited. Sometimes as I'm walking on the street, I go across the street to visit with a neighbor who's out in the yard. All of these things will fully disappear if this project is approved, as hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of more cars pour in to this small street that was designed for a very small residential neighborhood. Cars that are pouring their way toward River Rock and Cason Lane. So my question to you is simply this, and it's been reflected in other comments, and it's a question to you as a council. What kind of legacy do you want to build? Do you want people to say Murfreesboro is a place that cherishes children, supports older adults, and encourages neighborliness? Or do you want to be satisfied with a legacy of money and expediency? I am not anti-growth, but I am pro-principled and wise growth. I am looking for principled and wise leadership from each of you, so that 25 years from now or 50 years from now, people will look at this place and say, those people knew how to build a growing community. Well done. That's my hope for what your work will produce. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Culberson. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Hello, men and women of the City Council. My name is David Landry, and I reside at 3211 Springhouse Drive in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. First, I want to address one item. Has it been addressed that Brian Burns hunted on his property within city limits using deer stands? You know, I don't know how many feet from next door neighbors. I don't know how many feet from the Greenway. He bragged about this to Tavner McKelly, the founding member of the group fighting this development. And this is the part of the reason she no longer lives in Murfreesboro on property that backed up to this proposed development. He's bragging about the Greenway and trying to protect the amenity, but yet hunting within a few feet from the Greenway and people's houses. That doesn't seem very responsible. Okay. Brian's Birds is capitalizing on our city while the taxpayers are left to pay for our new infrastructure for all the people coming to live in the housing they built. Infrastructure that is being burdened right now is our landfill, six more years. I don't know how many years left. More people is more strain on that infrastructure. We up the zoning on this. That's even more people to drain on our city's landfill or our county's landfill. Wastewater treatment plants that already been documented that are nearing capacity. Our schools, our roads, police and fire departments. Burns builds the houses, he makes the dime, and we're left with a tab. Rutherford County is building a new school each year to accommodate new residents in middle and high schools. We're running out of land available for new schools. This is a documented problem. The proceeds of the sale of the electric company will be swallowed up, trying to desperately keep up with the infrastructure that developments like this will require. Where is the financial accountability of the developer? We do not have to approve the rezoning to allow even more numbers in our community. Smart growth is not rapid growth. We need to be revitalizing old, dilapidated communities, not bulldozing forests next to greenways, which will make our city a stronger and better place to live. We need to build the roads and infrastructure first, then build the development. Many times in this city, we have done the opposite. You could give all the facts and figures, but at the end of the day, I think you know in your heart what's the right decision. And I think that's what you got to go with. What's in your heart. Thank you, men and women of the City Council. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Mr. Baines.
Hi, I'm Richard Baines, Parkview Terrace here in Murfreesboro. I served on the Recreation Commission for 7 years, 4 of them as chairman, and during that time I was exposed to federal grants. One of the things that I remember about the federal grants is that they usually came with restrictions. I became concerned when I saw that the main entrance to a proposed development came off Cason Trail. My experience has been that the Fed would restrict use of the new extension of Cason Trail to access to the trailhead only and forbidding access to private development. I contacted Angela Jackson to see if federal funding was used in the construction of the Cason Trailhead. Her response was that the funding was 80% federal. I asked if grant money, or she said that, I asked if grant money was used in the construction of the Cason Lane extension. She said that Parks and Rec would only be involved in the development of the park itself, and sent my inquiry to traffic or whatever department built the road. The grant has not been found. Until it is, my question about funding the Cason Trail extension cannot be answered, and approving the current development as presently proposed may result in a violation of the restrictions attached to that grant. Additionally, the fact that stormwater runoff from Cason Trail does not drain directly to the river but is diverted along with some of the runoff from Spence Creek across Cason Lane into the proposed development. When the river reaches a certain flood stage, the hydraulic pressure it can create can overcome any drainage device that is not above the level of the river. I have not heard any meaningful discussions on the engineering plans to handle this situation. And another thing that you may not know is that when there is discussion referencing the FEMA floodplain, that data is somewhere between 10 and 20 years old. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good evening. I know it's late. I'm going to keep it brief with just a couple of things that I haven't heard. My name is Danielle Brown. I live at 2468 Oak Hill Drive. There are two things that I would like an answer on. The first one, and I noticed that it was skipped over in the presentation, is that on page 16 of what was submitted in the pattern book, it says in the corner that the wetland area on that property will be mitigated via an off-site wetland bank. The developer will not be seeking an amendment of this PUD related to wetland mitigation. So a wetland bank requires that there's actually a plan. You don't just put money to the side. We have no information on what that wetland bank is. It might not even be in Rutherford County. So we've got stormwater runoff, which may or may not be handled. We have, as the gentleman mentioned, water that is draining into what was a forest. The proposed development and the drainage ponds that are there only account and only have to account by law for the runoff from the property that's developed, not from the runoff that's currently being handled by the forest and the green space that's there, coming from the other neighborhoods. So although you can build in a floodplain, that zone, AE, is the same zoning that the Kimbrough Woods development, which flooded last February in that giant rainstorm that we had, regular rainstorm, not a 10-year event, just a regular annual heavy rain, the Kimbrough Woods subdivision is zoned the same way, and as the gentleman mentioned, the FEMA flood maps are 20 years out of date. In fact, the one that zoned that Kimbrough Woods subdivision AE and has the current development area also zoned AE is about 10 years out of date. So we have this problem where you can do these things, but it's not prudent development to do that. It's not thinking forward. And I'm asking you to please consider protecting the better good, the larger good, the community that has to deal with the flooding, that has to deal with the traffic, that has to deal with the impacts to their safety and access to the greenway, over and above the interests of a few individuals who stand to benefit directly from this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
This is probably going to be about as brief as it gets.
Name and address, please.
Ralph Dry, 2041 Tahoma Trail. I'm going to point out something I'm sure that all you very astute council people have already noticed, but since the mayor gavelled in the commencement of the public hearing, there's not been one voice of commendation for this project, only condemnation. And you remember the reasons that's been that way. There has not been one person get up to commend this project.
Thank you, Mr. Dry. Anyone else wishing to speak? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and go through these list of questions. Staff, who do we have here? Sam? Okay. Sam, I want to start, and I'll try to go down. Can we start? And I had several people who were asking about the FEMA studies and wetland mitigation. So can you just go overall to talk about drainage, stormwater, FEMA, all of that?
Thank you, Mayor McFarland. Sam Huddleston, Development Services. Good evening, members of council. For a long night, I'd be glad to answer all that you think we can help you with here. The city adopted stormwater management ordinance in 2005 that requires every new development to be responsible for the water that runs into their property and the water that's generated by their site. Mr. Huddleston, his design team, are experienced with our ordinance and have completed several designs here. So I'm very confident that they'll be able to meet the standards of our stormwater management ordinance. And beyond that, we also have with the engineer and the developer a goal to not make matters worse on local properties when we're aware of flooding issues there. And so we've examined a lot of the discharge conditions onto the properties. They've examined those, and we're very confident that we can handle the runoff from the neighborhoods into the runoff of the neighborhoods surrounding this into the property. Our FEMA floodplains are reviewed and adopted by FEMA. They do periodically update those. What I'll tell you about the updates we adopted in 2007 are the currently effective updates. FEMA, along with the Corps of Engineers, are in the midst of a Stones River watershed update that's for all of the Stones River Basin. We'll have updated floodplain maps and updated information. The project was started following the May 2010 floods of Middle Tennessee. The Stones River watershed was a part of many watersheds that have been studied, and so that's in the works. We've received draft maps from FEMA, and they're continuing through the process of getting those ready for adoption. We've provided some comments back to them, and those things will be updated. What I will say about the modeling on the West Fork of the Stones River, we, the City of Murfreesboro, conducted our own model, submitted that to FEMA, and that was the best available information that's used at the time, and we're very confident in the quality of that study and in the results that were provided from it. And so while there's some debate and discussion about the floodplain maps being 10 to 20 years old. This data, our technical staff and the staff at FEMA and Corps of Engineers are very comfortable with the quality of what we have there. There's a small amount of wetlands that were identified on this property, and we believe that the applicant has the ability to mitigate those. Wetlands are regulated by the state of Tennessee, and so when there's an impact of over 1/4 acre of wetlands, the person impacting that has a requirement to mitigate. There are lots of ways to mitigate. They also have the option to preserve and protect because this was such a small amount of wetland, and I believe that the study reported that it was of not a high quality, that TDEC would be comfortable with a mitigation plan. One of the ways to mitigate is to buy wetland credits from a wetland bank. That's an acceptable practice. In fact, in many cases, it's the preferred practice, and we see a lot of applicants do that for especially small quantities of wetland mitigation of 1 to 2 acres. I think that's where the 3 specifically you ask about, Mayor.
Let me go through. I'm looking through my
related to wetlands and floodplain
questions.
and drainage.
Mayor, I asked him one while you're looking.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Someone mentioned about a crash gate. Can you give us your perception of crash gate or
Yeah, so,
crash gate into this subdivision?
Into the subdivision. So talking about public roads, our community, in many communities, highly value access to public roads and frontage on public roads. And in any property that has access to a public road, that's a very, very protected thing. What we always have encouraged, one of the policies that we have in our subdivision regulations and planning criteria is to connect to public roads and provide multiple connections to public roads for larger developments. And so every time we see an opportunity to do that, we want to do that. To put a crash gate on a public road would require that the developer do everything they need to do to make it a public road, but then restrict access to it. And so it would redistribute the traffic from that particular access to other public roads. I know there was some mention about the number of residents who live on Racket
Charles,
Club.
I want to say, I'm not trying to be rude, but if you're talking out in the audience, we're really trying to get the information back in these answers. So we've sat and listened, and I hope y'all understand we're trying to get all this information as well. So if you would please not talk while we're trying to hear from the professionals, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
So what I would say to continue the answer, Mr. Wade, is that we would prefer and recommend a public road connection, a full access connection rather than a gated entrance on an access to this subdivision. There are really only 2 public roads available to this project that provide full access. One of them is Eastview, the other one is Racket Club. There were a mention of the number of homes on Racket Club and Oakwood being in the range of 37. There are approximately the same number of homes on Eastview Drive, and if we do close one of those entrances, we will shift all of the public traffic to the other public street. So I would encourage us to take a look at distributed connectivity and maintaining these points of public road access where they've been stubbed into the property.
Mr. Nelson, we had a lot, and I don't know if this is your responsibility to answer, but we had a lot of questions about a traffic study. Can you?
I'd be glad to address that.
Okay.
Mr. Bill Huddleston and Mr. Sam Huddleston, speaking here before you tonight, we're both registered engineers in the state of Tennessee. We have a duty to uphold to the public health, safety, and welfare over and above our private business and contractual relationships for clients. And so we're held to a higher standard than the public. I would also tell you that Mr. Huddleston has a degree in civil engineering. His area of emphasis was traffic and transportation. He and his firm conducted many of the versions of previous major thoroughfare plans for our community. He followed the guidelines of the professional organization, which he's a member of the Institute of Traffic Engineers. Our staff reviewed that. We have reviewed his scope. We reviewed his methodology, and we agreed and accepted that, and that was all part of our review of the traffic study before he conducted it, and then we reviewed his findings with him and internally, and so we find the traffic study to be a good representation of the predicted traffic patterns for this community.
We had a question on the new road that's going to go to Highway 99, the timeline, and how that ties in with the development.
So I think that would be a good question maybe for a representative of the developer to answer. I'm not sure that I was fully clear on that myself, but I did make a note that I thought that needed some clarification for us here tonight, so that we understood the timing and the relationship of that roadway to the approval of the development plan.
Yeah, and I will say, I think Mr. Liddell asked Mr. Odell asked a question about open space, and in our book, tells us there's 30 acres of open space. I believe that's correct, that it tells us. Isn't that right? Or I guess let's ask the developer when they come up, if you'll.
What percentage was wooded?
Okay, yeah, that will.
So maybe Mr. Huddleston, Bill Huddleston, be able to help us with the phasing of that.
Yes, absolutely. The construction access is in writing, and as one of the residents noted, it is legally actionable. Mr. Burns has a contract with the developer to the south that he's got to build his portion within a certain amount of time, and the developer to the south has to develop their portion of the road within a certain amount of time. And Mr. Burns has committed, and if it's not in the pattern book, it can be, or as part of this approval, he is committed to do no vertical construction until that road is constructed.
Do you know the question? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, one thing that kind of backs up to what we were talking about just a second ago, but I'm having trouble. I'm trying to go back and forth between the map in our book and the satellite map, and I'm having a little trouble. Can you give me a little bit of understanding of where, I would just call it this middle stub, the one that kind of comes back? I suspect that's to the south, the way this thing is kind of turned. All I know to call is that middle stub out. I don't even know how to get you to do this. Yeah, does that go straight, and if I go over to my map, does that go to Eastview?
So Mr. LaLance, I think the orientation of the exhibits inside the plan development booklet are rotated 90 degrees.
Yeah.
So due north would be to the left of the page. In your satellite map, due north would be to the top. So the middle stub is going out to Eastview Drive.
Is it in the back of that? Okay, I think I found it now. Yeah, I got it. So it connects into the back of that, well, right where that stub out is. It looked like a cul-de-sac until I zoomed in on more. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Can we get some more information on, there was questions, I think Ms. Phillips had asked about the overall road size from Cason Lane Trail, the new connector road. During the presentation, I think y'all had said it goes from 2 to 3 to 5, but maybe a little more information on that would be good.
Yes, sir. If you can, hang on just a second. I'll try to find
Mr. Ellison, along with that, when you're talking about that road, also there was a question about the property that is not owned by developer, that what the adjacent property where the road built by others, what's also where they are in that process.
Yeah, I didn't do their engineering, so I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to defer to Mr. Huddleston to get that answer. Or
Okay.
Mr. Blomley, he might know.
Okay.
Asking about
In
the
their
status of the apartment project.
Contract.
to the south.
There was a question, just what's going there.
Good evening once again, Mayor and Council. The
we have not received a site plan for the apartment complex. We received a preliminary plat for the Shalom Farms development on World Outreach's property, which includes the roadway connection with Barfield Road, and the new street that would go up north heading towards the property that Mr. Burns is proposing to make the connection on. Will stub into that property, and then he's proposing to take that to the north to Cason Trail. The construction plans for Shalom Farms for that roadway construction are in review with our engineering department right now, as are the signal plans for the intersection of Barfield Road and New Salem Highway. So it's in process right now.
Do we know how many homes are, I mean, there was some additional homes planned on the 16 acres.
That 16 acres, and I think there was a question about what that 16 acres would be zoned, how it would be developed. It's currently zoned RS10. Mr. Burns does not propose to incorporate that into this planned development. It would be developed with the existing RS10 zoning. Mr. Huddleston has put together a concept plan for it to go along with the roadway alignment. I'm not sure the number of homes that I think he mentioned it earlier, but 24 homes on that 16 acres. But it would be developed with the existing RS10 zoning.
Okay. I think I know the answer to this, but the traffic study that we did does not include, I mean, we're expecting this additional road to relieve the pressure on the 600 homes. But does the traffic study that we did or that was presented include the impact of those 24 homes and whatever Shalom Farms is going to do?
November 27th, we wrote a letter outlining what that would mean to the amended traffic study that we had already done. We projected up to 35% of the traffic generated by the southern 366 townhomes would utilize this route, which is 950 trips a day. We project up to 30% of the traffic generated by the northern 256 units to use this route, which corresponds to 741 trips a day. So therefore, up to 1,128, trips per day out of the 5,200 that Hidden River would generate would use this roadway. And again, the capacity of that roadway is almost 14,000 vehicles. And Mayor McFarland, I do have those construction plans here for the road. Our road from Cason Trail will match the northern section of their road, which is a 24-foot wide pavement, which is a 2-lane roadway. But as this road crosses a bridge headed towards State Route 99, it becomes a 3-lane commercial section. And then when you get to State Route 99, and it hits right at Barfield Road, you have the 2 left turn lanes, the through lane, a separate right turn lane, and then the lane coming in. So you have a full complement of lanes there at the
5 lanes.
State Route 99, correct.
What about Barfield across the road? And do we have?
Barfield across the road is scheduled to be improved as well. Once completed, there will be 2 right turn lanes there, a through right, and then a left turn lane, and then 1 lane coming back southbound. And if you don't mind, I'd like to point out one other thing that was discussed tonight, and I think it's important in this conversation. There's a lot of talk about wildlife and that sort of thing, and we understand that. We've created a lot of green space with this development, but what we're proposing is a planned development, which means you have a lot of teeth in this thing, and you have the authority, and city staff has the authority, and Planning Commission will again have the authority to hold us to these standards that we're proposing here tonight. If we leave the zoning as is, it can still be developed, as has been said, and it can be developed, and you still got the wildlife issues, you still have engineering issues that have to be addressed, but you lose the teeth that you would have under a PUD. You won't have it if we develop under the existing zoning, and I think that's very important to point out here.
And did you indicate that no construction is going to start until these roads projects have been completed?
No vertical construction. We'll probably we'll construct our infrastructure and get it ready, but we will not start any vertical construction, any home construction of any kind until that road's ready to go to State Route 99. Is that correct, Mr. Byrne? Yes.
And that's going to be in the contract, right?
Where will that construction traffic come from?
I'm sorry?
Where will that construction your development construction, where would that come from?
Well, it would have to come by out Cason Trail.
Okay.
Has there been any research about this access road involving funding the Cason Trail development? Has there been anybody looking into that question that Mr. Baines raised?
Yes, Mr. Shackley, I'll be glad to address that. You're talking about the grant funding that was used to construct Stones River Greenway. And so what Mr. Baines was referencing is many of our parks have been built with federal funds, and so there are land use restrictions on how we can use that. It can only be used for park. It shouldn't be used for any accommodation of private business interest. However, the part that we constructed here was built with transportation dollars. And so a different set of criteria applied to this. And it's very clear in our run-up to this project and to the extension of Cason Trail that it would be made available to the property that we were crossing through. And so the contract with the owner there was a part of our development plan with the federal funding. That would allow them to have future access to this property, and that's on the north side and the south side of Cason Trail. So we don't have a problem with compliance with our federal funding criteria for this part of the Greenway.
Let me ask another question, because it's another broader question than just required in this particular application. But when development occurs or a plan is brought to us, and we've done a traffic study, do we require an evaluation of the adjacent roads to whether they are substandard and any improvements that the developer might be required? I think I know the answer to this as well, but I want to get it in the public record. Is that we have, when we look at a development, do we require the developer to have any responsibility for improvement of roads that are adjacent to that development that might be impacted by that development?
Certainly we do. Within the subdivision regulations, we have a substandard street policy, and within our site plan regulations as well. So that affects both residential development and non-residential, which would be commercial, industrial, and other types of uses. And so over the years, we've used that doctrine to require off-site improvements. One of the things that we asked Mr. Huddleston to do was to make recommendations, not just on what Mr. Burns might be required to do to improve access for his property, but we also asked him to look further at some of the existing public roadways. And we do know there are some areas in there that will result in some needed public improvements that would be proposed by our Public Works Department in the future. And that's primarily going to be improving some sidewalk connections and then changing the configuration of some of the local intersections to the traffic control devices that are going to be warranted. And so we did ask Mr. Huddleston to also help us analyze Mr. Burns's impacts with this development. And so what you see as a result of that is a recommendation on Cason Trail itself for improvements that he'll be responsible for, including a 10-foot pedestrian path. So we will enhance that bike and pedestrian connection back to Stony Meadow Drive, and then a complement of turning lanes, improvement on Cason Trail itself. That wasn't specifically mentioned by the applicant, but it is part of his development plan.
So are there any things proposed for, I've been in this neighborhood, and they are small roads and there's no sidewalks, so people are kind of compelled to walk in the roads, because and I understand some of and empathetic to some of the neighbors' suggestion that it's going to be a more dangerous walk to your neighbor's house. Are there any improvements at Racket Club? Are there any improvements at Eastview? I know you said Cason Trail, but...
Yeah, so Cason Trail, an interesting thing there is 2 blocks away, Cason Trail has bike lanes and sidewalks. At Stony Meadow, it has sidewalks and curb and gutter, but there is a 2-block section in there that's beyond Mr. Burns's property that we've analyzed with our city engineering staff, and so I think you'll be seeing a recommendation from us to come back to make some modifications in there that need to happen regardless of what happens with this development to give us that connectivity of bike and sidewalk into the greenway and the park. And quite honestly, I can stand here and say that I'm ashamed that we didn't pick that up earlier. But that was some comments that came from our interaction with the residents very early on at City Hall before any of the public meetings, and we said, you know, they're right. We don't have a continuation of the bike and the sidewalk lanes there, and so Mr. Griffith and his staff have looked at some concepts there, and I'm confident they'll be bringing forth some recommended improvements there to change that situation. There was a question on Racket Club, and I apologize for not following up with that, Mr. Shacklet, and wouldn't be mad at you if you reminded me I didn't do that. But Racket Club Drive would not meet the current standards for a new subdivision street, but it does have adequate lane widths. And by that I mean the pavement width there meets the minimum for a 2-lane width, 2-lane roadway.
Let's let him talk, please.
And so we have not. I wanted some theme music. Maybe that wasn't it. Something a little softer, maybe. We don't have Racket. We haven't identified any improvements for Racket Club. It's currently a ditch section street, and we do agree with that. And we do have currently many well-functioning ditch section streets in the street network of the city of Murfreesboro.
There's no plans to upgrade that?
There are not.
Okay. And I think Mr. Sider had asked the question about, and Ms. Charleston, I think I know the answer to
Well,
this.
I need to clarify one thing, if that's okay.
Sure.
It was brought to my attention that Mr. Burns had previously agreed to construct the construction access before anything happens in Hidden River. So not only the vertical construction, but any of the construction, so that way that we won't have to use Case and Trail during that construction process.
Okay. Ms. Charleston, I caught, it just so happened, for the residents, there's a new general manager at Old Time Pottery. He's now serving on our cable commission. So he came to his first meeting, and I said, hey, you know, can we talk to you about that sign in the middle of the road of River Rock? Can we get rid of that sign? But what are some of the plans? I mean, it's no secret up here, that's probably the worst intersection in the city of Murfreesboro. Can
one.
River, hey, I appreciate the claps, trust me, but the Cason Lane, River Rock, and Old Fort Parkway, where we've got, is there anything that can be done to that intersection?
So I do want to take credit for a project that our program worked on. We call it a hotspot program. We probably did a dozen projects, but we added dual left turn lanes from John Rice Boulevard onto Old Fort Parkway. Hopefully our residents who use that area appreciate that improvement. On the other side of the interchange, we added dual right turns that were right turn only on Thompson Lane coming on to Old Fort Parkway. And so that helped the traffic flow from those side streets. But realistically, Mayor, there's not a lot of additional capacity that can be accomplished in there. We can make some signal improvements, and we can make some minor improvements to help with what we've got there. But the real answer is to take traffic away. And so you've heard us talk about.
Folks, let's please. We're again. I get everyone's passionate about this. It's getting late, but it doesn't accomplish anything when we can't hear him talk. It just hurts the residents because we're not getting the information that we need to get. So please respect that. We've tried to listen and respect each one of you guys to listen. Please respect the staff when they're talking. I just ask nicely for that.
So be glad to continue there then that one of the answers to help us on the interchange at 96 is to take traffic away from that. And so while you go out there today and you see what's happening on State Route 99, understand that that's under construction, that even today the conditions are worse because of the construction on State Route 99. But as we reported to you earlier, that project will be open completely for traffic in December of this year. That's going to make a change in traffic patterns. People who would not have used that previously will go south and use State Route 99 and get to the interchange. And so this first phase is going to be a difference maker there. Mr. Huddleston rehearsed for us Phase 2 and Phase 3, which are on the books to be completed in 2023 and 2025. And so that's going to help the traffic flow to the south. And that roadway was designed not for current traffic, but for future traffic projections, just like we do. TDOT projects 20 years in advance on the estimated traffic volumes. And so that's going to be a good 20-year roadway, but that's not the only answer. And so as we rehearsed with you and with our 2040 major transportation plan, that interchange as well gets loaded up when the full build out of traffic on State Route 99 occurs. And so we talked to you about 2 local road options, one of those being a bridge from River Rock Boulevard to the Warrior Drive area, and then that plan eventually takes that over to New Salem Highway near Rutherford County Jail. A second project that was described to you tonight was what we call the Warrior to Rutherford to Rutledge connection. That's happening south of here, but it will actually help remove traffic from that State Route 99 intersection. Those local route only bridges are built for the people who are in the audience tonight, to give them an option to make local trips without going through the interchanges. Those are not made for our out-of-town guests who travel through our community on Highway 96 and Highway 99 and I-24, but it's really built for the local residents to allow them to move more conveniently back and forth across the interstate and across the Stones River. And so those are the major projects that I'd rehearse with you tonight that are on our books. And we have more specific plans on a couple of those than others that we'll be bringing back to you, I think, in the next few weeks.
I had a question real quick, Mr. Huddleston. I know we've talked about the Racket Club Drive sort of being county standard road, not city standard road, and you and I have had some discussion about that, and certainly value and respect your opinion on that. How much of the connectivity piece of that is wanting to be consistent from a planning standpoint? Because I know we support that, and we've held those standards, and I've voted to hold those standards as well. But it does feel different, especially because of that northern radius of that turn that we talked about. You know, even if the road, if we wanted to say the road is wide enough, I do have concerns about the amount of traffic that would come through that area and try to navigate that turn at whatever speed radius without sidewalks and other things like that, and with there being no plan to make improvements to that. Any commentary additional commentary that you can give me, help me?
Well, yeah, I think I'll use one of the statements that was made by one of the residents tonight, that in the years that they've been there, they're not aware of any traffic accidents on River Rock Boulevard in that stretch or Oakwood Circle. And so our current drivers are able to navigate that very well. And what I would say is that the drivers who will be coming in and out of the neighborhoods that are there are going to be just like the folks in our audience tonight. They're going to be families. They're going to have children. They're going to be respectful of that. And so the fact that we're able to use that roadway today without incident says to me that while it doesn't meet our standards, that doesn't mean that it's unsafe or dangerous. That means that it doesn't meet our current design policies. And I don't want to compare streets to streets, but I will do it in this case. Rucker Lane, which has a much higher traffic volume and a much more difficult area to navigate, is less than 20 feet wide, 20 feet of pavement. And so when I say that this is very adequate pavement width, and I just would use that for those that might know that route here, Rucker Lane needs to be widened. Rucker Lane will be widened, and it'll be widened because, for one reason, is because we do need a wider pavement section out there to handle the traffic. But for local streets and residential only traffic, my commentary would be that I'm comfortable that the pavement there, the width is adequate the curve geometry is adequate, and that the folks that would use that would be able to use it safely and successfully.
Thank you.
Charles, what's the time frame for the bridge to go in over the river?
So don't have an exact time frame. I think there was a reference mentioned tonight that was 2023. We're working on the details of that. That time frame's probably in the ballpark. It's about a 3-year process to design and construct the bridge, we think, and so we believe that we'll have a project to bring before you in the next 2 to 4 weeks, or 2 to 4 months, I'm sorry, and lay the specifics out on that particular part. Now, what that does is it goes from River Rock over only across the river. And it was a project that was included on our major transportation plan. The second phase of that would actually take that over the interstate into New Salem Highway, but we are only talking about phase 1 that would be constructed near term. And that would provide access to Warrior Drive and Beasy Road. And again, that connectivity is not for folks from out of town, but it's really for neighbors who live in that Racket Club, River Rock, Case and Lane area, to be able to give them convenient access to the services that will be available in that area, and also gives them access back out to another signalized intersection at Warrior Drive and State Route 99. So we like the connectivity for the community to give us multiple ways in and out of that Case and Lane and River Rock area. And to go back to a question that we talked about earlier, those are the elements that help us at Old Fort Parkway and I-24 and Old Fort Parkway and Case and Lane, is by taking or providing other routes out of that area, we're going to help reduce the congestion there. We don't make it great, but we do help reduce it.
Sam, I remember, you know, in our thoroughfare plan, typically, I think I recall, and you know, basically when you would plug in one of those types of outlets, that you could, you know, it would give you some sort of a traffic count of reduction on the other outlets around it. Does it? I don't remember if that was for every road, every project that we were talking about, or if that was just, you know, I remember that specifically on Cherry Lane, kind of what the impact on Thompson Lane was going to be. I remember one over by Veterans. Do you happen to remember, did we have that same information on this, just as to give everybody an idea of what kind of relief we're talking about there? I mean,
so I don't have
built out.
Yeah, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but
yeah,
that traffic model, we did a do nothing alternative. So if our community continues to grow at the rates we project, and we build nothing in our major transportation plan, we had a prediction of how high the traffic volumes would be in 2040. And then we did, if we do everything, now there are a handful of projects that affect this area.
Yeah.
And so the number that sticks out to me is that bridge over the West Fork of the Stones River, when it's connected to over I-24, will carry about 10,000 trips per day. There's probably 40,000 trips per day going through the intersection of I-24 and Highway 96. Now, not all of that would be reduced at I-24 and Highway 96, but a good part of that would be traffic that's diverted from that intersection and able to make the local trip over to New Salem Highway.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty substantial number, though.
It is.
Yeah.
And a typical two-lane road for us can handle certainly comfortably 15,000, and in some cases as many as 17,000, 18,000 cars per day. And I'm going to look over at my transportation friend Bill and see if he'll agree with that.
And this intersection is going to have 14 or 15,000 capacity?
Which
The intersection we talked about, you just mentioned.
I'm talking about the road connection between.
The words are sticking in my head.
Sure.
We just heard 14,000 on this impact of the new intersection that we're doing, and you just said the road across the interstate is going to have a capacity of 14.
Correct, and they're similar road networks. So the road network going from Cason Trail to Salem Highway is a comparable section to the roadway that we envision going across the interstate. It's going to be basically 2 lanes, one in each direction, with the center turn lane on our roadway. But you really only have 1 lane of capacity in each direction. The center turn lane's there only to accomplish that. And so yes, the connection from Cason Trail would have a 14 to 15,000 potential capacity. And then the bridge over the river would have a comparable capacity as a 2-lane section.
God, just one of those two numbers stuck in my head, and I couldn't say. Yeah, that was
I'm gonna make a couple comments, just kind of for what it's worth, column, and honestly, it wouldn't hurt my feelings if we just, slept on this a week or whatever, but I'll do what the council wishes to do here, but, we've had a lot thrown at us tonight, and probably still got a couple of little question marks that I'd like to touch up, but anyway, I do want to say a couple things while you guys are here, the residents in particular, and I want to make sure this comes out the right way, but I mean, I've heard some stuff tonight, like the idea that this has been going on for 13 months is a bad thing. I just cannot feel like that's farther from the truth. I mean, the fact that this has been going on for 13 months means there's a whole lot of people putting a heck of a lot of effort, that you guys think are on the other side, that are trying to do everything we can do, they can do, figure things out. And so, yeah, it's been going on a long time. I think we're all a little, fatigued over it, frankly. But it's because there's been a heck of a lot of work going into this to try to make it better. Now, there's could be some argument, well, it should have never started where it started. All right, whatever. But the fact of the matter is there's been a lot of work into this. And I'm going to make the statement, another thing I want to say to you about the Greenway, somebody made the statement, and I don't remember who it was, but I put some notes out here that the Greenway's being taken away or however many acres at a time. I really just feel compelled to tell you that the Greenway was constructed through a whole lot of people's backyards the day it was built. It went through a bunch of people's backyards. It butts up to factories, it butts up to railroads, it butts up to downtown bridges, and it butts up to apartment complexes the day it was built. It's frankly lucky that there were some areas where there were some trees around it, and I'm not diminishing the fact that, that it's, we wish that, you guys as a group would have gone in and bought the property, and then it would have all been trees forever, perhaps, whatever. I don't know, but that's not what we're faced with. We're trying to dictate, the government sitting here trying to dictate to somebody who rightfully owns the property what they should or shouldn't do on their property. It's hard. So I just want to make sure I say that to you, and I'm committed, to continuing to work on or whatever. I'm committed to make a decision based on what I know tonight. I will say, I have had at least 4 or 5 conversations with the developer or the representatives, and I will frankly tell you that they have taken a lot of steps, I think, to make this a better project and to make it a good project. I'm going to finish by also saying, though, that the density number is still with what I've been I'm trying to be consistent with the developers and consistent with citizens. And so I'm using a model to try to drive towards numbers to get to, to try to really do exactly what you guys are talking about. And we're all, I think, trying to get there. This particular project would have fallen under would have been grandfathered because it was in the system prior to the allocation study and the allocation ordinance. However, I mean, I will tell you guys that based on all that math and the votes that I made, and you guys up here know, there's been a couple of developments come through in the last 2 months here that I've stood on it and said no a couple of times, but it was just because, it was 55 houses instead of 41 or whatever the numbers were, based on where we're trying to get as a city to achieve our budget and our infrastructure issues to improve that. Frankly, I'll kind of look at this side of the crowd because there's more yellow shirts over here, but you know, this development in that same math is only about 40 or 45 units away from that, of the infrastructure working exactly like what we've asked it, you know, what we're trying to drive towards for smart growth. I know it doesn't feel that way to you guys, but, you know, I got to tell the developer, I got to be consistent. I got to be fair to all of the developers. And so that's where I'm at on it. And so but, you know, you guys, I appreciate the heck out of what you guys have all been here and spent time, and we're here late and all that kind of stuff. But I do want to clear up a couple of those things, and also say thanks to everybody who's taken a heck of a lot of time. I had some great comments, by the way, from residents and neighbors. I mean, you know, there were a few that weren't quite very tactful, but a lot that were extremely tactful and polite and great and helpful and gave me things to talk about and to think about. So anyway, I want to thank you guys and the developer. You know, that's where I stand on it, but appreciate what everybody's done.
I want to make just a couple comments. I do agree. You know, I've got probably a couple more questions that with staff in regards to really the road network and how that plays in. So I'm not sure all those can get answered tonight. But one, you know, and I mean this in context, but I want you all to understand, not many people come to council meetings to show support of anything. Very rarely do we see people who come for any development that say, hey, I'm for that. So I don't want y'all to think that we're discrediting what you're saying, but the majority of our subdivisions, I do have this question, and if y'all will indulge me, how many people are originally from Rutherford County who are here? If you'll raise your hand. So maybe 5 out of a room of 150. So I joke and say that the 5 who are here, y'all can fuss about growth and traffic, but the rest of you are just like me. Y'all moved here and we're causing the growth issues. But the reason I say that is because...
The council, the same question?
Yeah. How many council members are from Rutherford County? Yeah, so Kurt and I, we appreciate you. Yeah. So what my point is, what I'm saying is I don't want y'all to think the questions that we're going through and we're getting answered on road networks, that we're getting answered on infrastructure, no one wants anything built next to them. If we only approved things that people were for, we would still be riding wagons around here because there'd be no roads for us to ride on. And so I want y'all to understand that we are really trying hard. And this is when I met with the group at my office, and I really appreciate there's some really good dialogue that we had. What I'm trying to look at is a piece of property that's already zoned for, is it 480 units or 440? If you figure 4 units per acre, 120 acres, it's 480 units. So whether we agree that the property should be developed or not, it is approved for 480 units.
Actually more than that.
Yeah, so 500 units as it sits, or whatever that number is. So what we're trying to look at is to say, what's the benefit, not necessarily to the overall public, but what's the benefit to this area if this development gets approved as it stands? And that's really where, you know, I'm not saying, I've heard all kinds of things about the conversations with the development about, you know, this is what I'm going to do if this doesn't get approved. We don't get involved in that. But what I will say is we're trying to look to see how we make this as best as we possibly can. And my thing is, I'm not sure I can do that tonight, but I do want to say thank y'all for, I mean, I think I've been able to respond to most every single email, but I've gotten some really good information that's come from the neighborhood, and that's how this process works. So we're working to get the best options that we can. And I think I told the group this, if the 99 road if this project had come through without that connection on Highway 99, I was a no-go. I think the Highway 99 connector is huge to be able to show how the development, you know, possibly could work.
And I'm going to kind of compound on that too, or expand, because I think the group, and you know, I think I have emailed and spoken to many of you many times, and so I know how passionate you are about this. But one thing I want to emphasize is, to the mayor's point, you know, the work that you all have done up to this point has changed this plan, because this was not the original plan. You know, when this came to the Planning Commission, I voted not to support it, and for the same reason the mayor just said. There's a great point to be made that with the existing density that is allowed, when you start talking about what the developer's asking for and what he has compromised to give, many of you, I've already told you that I am in support of that, and so I am willing to support it. I'm not crazy about that northern exit, but Mr. Huddleston will get, you know, fuss at me if I don't be consistent with what we're doing. I do think there are some challenges there, but I'm okay waiting to vote if we need more time, but I am going to support the projects, and I appreciate how hard you've worked to make it a better project than what it was when it came through, and give staff the credit for pushing to come up with something better that we could get there with. So I'm appreciative for that.
Ronnie, how many times have you voted against this project so far?
I don't know.
Well, it came before us twice at the Planning Commission. I don't know if you were both meetings, the reason I asked that, because I've voted against this project twice, because I listened to your concerns. And the reason that I voted against it was because it was not the best project that could possibly be presented. There were opportunities for improvement, and they were opportunities that were created by your comments and your questions. And many of the emails we've received have been very nice, and some of them just said, basically, if you don't vote the way I want you to, I'm going to throw you out of office. If your attitude is that attitude, throw me out of office. I'm ready to go, because I am here to represent the public, but I'm also here to do what I think is best for the city of Murfreesboro. And so when we look at projects that are going to develop in Murfreesboro, we try to get those projects to be at the highest level we possibly can, and that starts at the Planning Commission. And when we look at Planning Commission projects, this particular project, when the developer first came to me, it didn't have multiple access points, and I went to him and I said, you're not going to get my vote without multiple access points. It's too much density in there and it's unsafe. The next time, he had fixed the problem. And I said, it's still too much density. And he came back with a plan that had much less density in it. And most recently, he surprised me by coming back, which I think is a game changer for him, and the fact that he has now not only built a road that will carry his traffic out to Highway 99, but for those who live, I'll guarantee you, some people in this room will use that road that he's going to build. And you know, it's a deal where people come and they tell me, Eddie, I'm against Walmarts. But when I go to Walmart, I see them shopping there, which is always interesting to me that they're opposed to the project, but as soon as it opens up, they're in favor. They can do business with them. So you're going to use these roads if these roads are built. We haven't sold any park property that is developed as park, to my knowledge. I mean, I serve on the Parks and Recreation Commission, and I don't know of 1 inch that we have taken and said, we're going to sell this to a developer so this property can be developed. Is there an example I don't know of? I mean, maybe there is one, but I don't know of any. Yeah. But and lastly, I will tell you that I will be talking with the chief of police in the morning, and if you're one of the people who's speeding on River Rock, you're going to get a ticket.
He's already got an email, so when the first person said it, I sent the chief an email, so you'll probably see the radar signs up there tomorrow.
So we are working for you, and our intentions are to improve your neighborhood as much as we can, and with the development that develops beside you, to make it as high a product as we can possibly make it, because there is going to be something developed next door to you, and it's going to happen. And there used to be an old Western on TV that said, as sure as the sun rises in the east, change is coming, and it was an Indian who said it. Murfreesboro's in that situation, and for those that raised our hands that are natives from Murfreesboro and grew up here, we've been experiencing that change, me, myself, for over 60 years. And Is Murfreesboro a better place today? Absolutely, it's a better place. It's not Mayberry like I grew up in, but we have hospitals that are not even comparable to what we used to have. We have shopping opportunities that are not even comparable. We have restaurants and things that we didn't even have a chain restaurant when I was a kid. McDonald's finally came about halfway through my life, I think. But Murfreesboro has changed, and Murfreesboro is a great city. And if people outside our community watch this and just go by the opinions of how horrible it is and how horrible this city's run and what a rotten job these guys up here are doing, I'm going to tell you, these guys are doing a great job. And I firmly believe that their dedication is to the city. I think every night this week I have been at a different meeting in Murfreesboro representing the people in Murfreesboro, trying to make sure that we're protected and that things are being developed in our city to the highest level we can possibly do. We try to attract jobs, we try to attract business, we try to provide parks, we try to provide quality education. There's a million things on our plate, and this is one of them. And as y'all saw before, we were dealing with the electric department, and it was a difficult decision. We don't make easy decisions up here. We make difficult decisions. And if every decision we make is based on whether or not somebody's going to vote for you, you don't need to sit up here, I can tell you, because they're hard decisions, and I admire everybody who sits up here at this podium, because there's people who are going to criticize you and say bad things about you no matter what decision you make, because there's always two sides to the situation. So I appreciate those of you who have sent me notes. I hope I responded back to most all of you and said thank you for your input. I appreciate the suggestions you've made, because you have made this project a better project, and I think that is our ultimate goal, is to make it, whatever develops on this property, as good as it can possibly be. And depending on what they want to do, I guess we'll decide tonight or we'll decide in the future. But thank you all for coming, and I really appreciate your input into the process.
The question, kind of remains the same for me. I'll express where I am in this. The old adage, what came first, the chicken or the egg? What we're dealing with here is what came first, development or infrastructure? Are you going to have the infrastructure required to handle the development, or is the development going to be tailored to the infrastructure that you need? I had a chance before, when this project was first brought up, I plotted what has happened in this area. Listen, and some of those are the decisions that we made to have high-density multifamily homes in that area. And you have an amazing stress on the infrastructure in that area. It doesn't take anybody but a drive along Salem Pike or 96 to realize infrastructure is strained in that area. And for me, it's a question of timing. And some of the responsibility for the timing of how this hits Planning Commission and how this hits the City Council for a decision is our lack of defining and, I guess, directing our planning staff to look at these so that they can pass this on to people who are significantly looking at making significant investments in all of this planning and purchasing and designing. It takes a lot of money to do that, and we haven't given enough direction to say, you put this project off for the 3 years that it's going to take, or the end of this year. If this project had come in a year after we had felt the improvement that the completion of the Salem project had been there, it might be meet with a different approach from the community. But when my analogy that I used in trying to talk to some of you and talking to others in the community is stuffing the sausage. We just keep stuffing the sausage. This project is not a bad project. It's been well thought through, and I truly believe at some point and in some fashion it will be a benefit to our community. But the timing of it is difficult for me to support because I want to see some relief of the plans that we have on the books for infrastructure to improve the quality of life of this area, to let's see Salem improve. Let's see some of the intersection improvements that we have. And then, and I understand, unless you have the desire and the impetus of creating the development, it's hard to say, well, we'll build the infrastructure. Because you know who pays for the infrastructure if the developer doesn't? I mean, you guys do. You guys will have to pay through tax dollars. That's how it gets done. And so some of the initiatives that have been proposed by this developer and have been proposed by other collaborators in this project have been done so that we could have the infrastructure that's needed. And I don't think anybody would say, do we need that road accessing Salem? Everybody says, I would say yes. Yes, we need it. We need it now. So we'll just have to see what the will of council is, but my trouble is still one of timing. It's not the project. I've looked at the plan book. You know, I don't necessarily have any problems with the plan book. I don't have any problems with the quality of the product. But the timing of the product, the timing of the development, even though it's 10 years in completion, I wish we had more time to where we could see some of the improvements, some of the plans that we have to improve the traffic flow in this area, to let them come to fruition and not just be, well, we think it's going to happen, and it's going to happen within 3 to 5 years. Then let it happen, and then I think the welcoming of a development such as this would be more appropriate. But that falls back on us. To me, that falls back on the council's not giving enough direction to our planning staff to be able to say that, and that's where I'm at.
We've had two extremely difficult decisions to make tonight. When I first looked at this, I wasn't really for that. I wasn't really for it. We were asked the developers to come back and change some things. They did. Again, some things were not so clear. They changed that. Seems like everything that we have asked them to do, they have done it. One of my major concerns was the road, the asset to the roads. And to hear tonight that no construction will start until all these roads are completed gave me a little consolation. If I was, and then I tried to put myself in the position if I lived in that area, how would I feel? Well, probably angry to a certain extent, but then too, sitting on the council, you get to see the big picture. A lot of times when things come up, they are segmented for the public. They don't see the big picture. And what we're trying to do is, some say we're growing too fast, but you have to grow if people keep coming in, unless people are going to be on top of each other. So right now, it's kind of hard. If I had to make a call tonight, I think I would go with it from what I'm hearing.
All right, Mayor and Council, I'd like to make the motion to defer. Craig, when do you think we could put this back on?
We won't meet next week. We have a workshop. The week after that is, what's that, the 23rd?
Holiday week.
Everybody gets their
Yeah, 23rd, that's.
23rd.
Monday.
That is a short week. I probably, the safest bet probably would be the 30th. We may meet on the 23rd, but it is a short week. There's a holiday on a Monday.
So that gives the developer and staff enough time to talk about it again, as well as we could talk about it as well. So I'd make the motion deferred to the 30th.
You want to just make it, you want to make it specific to the 30 in case we don't have a, you want to just make it till our next appropriate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
Just next appropriate.
Next appropriate meeting.
Second.
Yeah.
All right, motion is second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we'll move on to on motion. I hope I'm reading this right. Protest to the Wellness and Rewards Vendor Selection Internal Services.
Right. Yeah, I'll handle that. We have a vendor protest. We opened a bid for the wellness and rewards vendor. We had one of the packages that came in that did not comply with instructions. It wasn't marked on the outside, and that's important to the integrity of the process, and it was rejected because of that. That vendor's filed a protest. According to ordinance, it comes to council, and so the staff's recommendation is that the protest be denied and that we move forward with the bidders who provided information consistent with the bid process.
Craig, I read the protest letter or form or whatever.
Right.
It's I mean, it sounded like they felt like they had, you know, the language that we used in our bid process or wasn't clear enough to let that person know what they needed to do, that they didn't feel like, I mean, did we use a standard bidding process on this one? And
It's a standard bidding process, and what's required is that they mark on the outside of the envelope so the envelope doesn't get open until the date that it is a specific bid for a specific project, and if that's not on there, then we don't know, and we open bid early, and it impacts the integrity of the bid, and it wasn't there.
couldn't understand. Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand how he wrote it, exactly what was
I
going
know.
on, but okay, all right. Well, so there's no choice.
And what was the total number of submitted?
I think there were 4, so 3 well, Pam's here, I think, somewhere. I think there were 3 others. Yeah.
I'll move that we deny the protest.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye, we'll now go to the Wellness and Rewards Vendor Selection. Ms. Russell.
Wow. That's awesome.
I thought everybody would stay for me, but good evening, Mayor and council members. As you heard, the Wellness and Rewards Agreement with Humana originally ended December 31st, 2019, but was extended and now ends January 31st, 2020. Staff is requesting approval to select Humana as the city's wellness and rewards provider and authorize the city to enter into an agreement with Humana through December 31st, 2022. The city submitted a request for sealed proposals on October 7th, 2019. We received 3 responsive and responsible proposals. Based on the proposals, staff selected Humana because of their services and pricing. In addition, they've been the city's wellness provider for the past 3 years. The program provides employees with material challenges and reward systems that encourage healthy lifestyles, and it's also a positive impact on lowering employee health care costs. Funding for the wellness consultant is accommodated in the budget for fiscal year 2020. Thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Rick seconded it with a cough. No.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance. Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, do we have any license? No license. We have 2 reappointments to the Public Building Authority, Wayne Belt and Ted LaRoche.
You got ahead, Rick.
I think Rick needs mouth-to-mouth.
I'm good. He's gonna die.
So move.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet. Aye. Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Any statements to be paid?
No, sir.
Any other business from staff?
None here.
Any other business from the council? All right, thanks for the long night, gentlemen. Thanks, and lady, and thank you for the long night, staff. Stand adjourned.